Welcome to Every Step podcast. I'm Krystyna Weston.
And I'm Judith Beck.
Every Step is the podcast where career and life meet. Welcome to Every Step podcast. Judith, great to be back. Have we got a doozy today? Judith's laughing because we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one, but there is a serious side to it. It's quite contentious, the topics we're talking about today. We've got 4 key issues that we're going to play with, shall I say. We're going to chat about furries, the latest phenomenon. Well, it's not so late, but anyway, it's a rising phenomenon. And if you don't know what a furry is, we'll explain that when we chat about it. We're going to talk about pronouns. There's more than 70 odd, even more I've heard somebody say there's hundreds of them. How do we deal with them in the workplace? We're going to look at the word triggered. Are you triggered by the word triggered? And the latest issue that's been in the press the last week or so, gender pay gap. So Judith, let's kick it off with furries.
Oh God, Christy, I tell you what, before I start talking about it, I just want to make one point too, just to the audience, that we're having this discussion and we have certain views about it, but what we're trying to do as well is get our views out and have an adult discussion. So if you don't agree with us, or if you want to educate us, then send us in a question, send us in some information. We're not set in stone, but we need to be able to have this conversation. And people, one of the reasons why we didn't invite people in on these topics is because the majority of people are scared to actually talk about it because they're worried about being condemned or judged or whatever. And that's not a good way to have a free society and open conversation. We need to be able to talk about these things because sometimes there can be more than one right answer. Sometimes we don't know some of the information because we were born in a certain culture and had certain people teaching us. We might not know the facts. So if anything we say today, you don't feel is right or the facts aren't right, please send us an email. We will discuss it at one of our other episodes. We will discuss what people are saying because we want to have an open and honest conversation.
Yeah, well said, Judith. Well said.
This topic does my head in, actually, because
I want to explain what a furry is. Why don't you explain what a furry is?
Well, basically, it's called interspecies movement. So there are people out there who identify as a cat or a dog. And actually, Krystyna, in preparation for this, I combed the internet. There's people who identify as cake, as
inanimate, non-living, non-breathing objects.
It's and at the end of the day, you can identify something as something, but that does not necessarily make it so to the world around you. You may believe it, but the world around you, like I used to say, I believe I'm a wonderful singer, but I cannot carry a tune.
Well, guess what? No one's going to employ you as a singer, and I think we need to
employ me as a singer, but I'm great in the shower. So these types of things, my first question when I read about this is, I think, why don't people want to be human anymore? What's wrong with being a human? Why are they then thinking that they have to be? Is it because they've been? Because a lot of this has accelerated during COVID. So was it because of the isolation? Was it because of social media influence? Or is it deeper than that?
Could be a sense of belonging.
Sense of belonging, attention seeking. There's a whole list of things that could be the reason for it. And I think for the purpose of our episode it's more about you can do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's about impact in the workplace and impact on your career. That's the lens through which we're going to have this conversation.
Bingo. It's like, okay, as an employer who hires humans, do I then need to accommodate for someone who thinks they're a cat or a dog, and they want us to provide kitty litter and you might laugh, but that has happened in the toilets.
Well, if you want to identify as a cat in the workplace, does that mean the employer should microchip you and spay you because that's part of council regulations? Or are you just going to pick the good bits that suit you when you want to be an animal, but you don't? Look, I'm joking. I'm joking.
But it's true. Well, hey, what happens if a boy cat comes over and starts marking his territory around the office? I mean, I'm not going, are they going to be able to say, well, hey, that's what cats do. So, we laugh at this now, but I think the sort of the moral of the story is that if you start accepting these things and letting them go, you could be accepting something bigger down the track. So what are employers, not just employers?
Let's break it down. Let's break it down a little bit, because these things have many impacts. They have impacts on your own career. Let's say I want to identify as a different species. Right now, first of all, there's that we're aware of. We've done a little bit of research. We can't find anything, certainly under Australian law, that has tested the issue. There's been no test around Human Rights Commission or Fair Work Commission that we're aware of right now in Australia. And look, we don't care what people do in their private lives. And there's kind of this do no harm principle. If you're not hurting on anybody, I don't care. But if you come into the workplace and you're impacting others around you, their ability to do their work, your ability to do your work, if you're doing things that are detrimental to the brand of your company, I think there's something to answer for. And I've had a bit of a look on the Unfair Dismissal Australia site. There's a great article there for anyone that's interested. And in all likelihood, if you come in and meow in the background and put your company's reputation at risk, if you're in a front-facing role, in all likelihood, that would be grounds for dismissal. And that's logical, right?
Yeah, that's logical. I would have an issue with that. or the howling or the barking. What if somebody barks at a fellow employee? Is that harassment?
Well, it could be, absolutely, because I don't like being barked at. You're not treating me with respect.
That's right.
If you're barking at me, then I could be implying that you think I'm a bitch. And now I've got an issue with you. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly right. I mean, it is, look, it sounds funny now when we talk about it, thinking, oh, well, but I also looked up something and it said that there's like 3,000 plus people in Australia that identify as furries. So
yeah. And some of this is a media beat up as well. I mean, there is a bit of a media beat up. And I've read some of the articles too, where the headline says woman identifies as a wolf. And then you read further on and actually she's just embodying her power animal. And, I've done a lot of work in spirituality and I understand power animals and I have power animals myself. I don't run around telling everybody who my power animal is or what it is, but there are times when I embody that, take the energy of that. But the headline was woman is a wolf. But then you read further down, it's like, well, no, she comes in dressed as a human. She does her job. She's very good at her job. And she just uses those characteristics to help her be even better at her job. No issue. She's not putting anyone at harm. She's not coming in a wolf suit.
That's her personal life that she leaves at home. And that's fine. You don't bring in the office. You don't start howling. And she doesn't, it's her personal life. That's fine. I mean, to me, I think, you are not bringing it into, but it's also because there were articles on some of the ones that we looked at where it was happening in the schools and the schools were accommodating.
Well, the school accommodated a very bright young girl who wanted to identify as a cat.
And I think that's quite interesting that in the article, of that particular article, they said she was an extremely bright young girl And I'm thinking, well, first of all, why do you need to say she's an extremely bright young girl? If she wasn't extremely bright, would that have a difference in the
Exactly. Does it even matter?
And to me, people might not agree with this, but my view is if a kid is identifying as a cat, you don't accommodate them at school. You get them help. They need a professional to find out why it is that they don't want to be human. I know what my dad would do. Back when he would have said, "You want to be a cat? Lamb or beef and for dinner tonight," and it would be out of a can, and I'd be sleeping in the garage, and that probably would last about 2 days, and then I'd be back being myself. But
well, this is this picking and choosing. I just want the good aspects of this identity, but I don't want the other aspects of this identity. And it's like whether you're a human or whether you're a cat. When we're human, because we are human, when we're human, we do a lot of stuff we don't like, right?
That's right. When did it become
part of being human?
When did it become an issue to be human? I mean, and celebrate your humanness, whichever way you want to celebrate it, as a human, not as an interspecies. And also too, when these kids are doing this, where are they getting these ideas from? Where's this coming from?
Social media. And look, it's about a sense of I think a lot of it is because we've lost connection, and it's about a sense of belonging, and people have fun with this. It's fantastic. There are whole communities out there, people that dress up as medieval people and go out and do jousting and battles, and or they want to, those clubs and those communities are fantastic.
Yeah.
If you want to be part of a furries community, brilliant. I don't know how much fun it would be wearing one of those outfits in 40 to 35, 40 degree heat. But if you want to be part of a community, go for it. Like, that's so important. It's so important to have that fun and to have that creativity and that self-expression. But when it comes to work, you're there to work. You're there to represent the brand of the business. You're there not to cause angst and issues for the colleagues around you. And you're there to be professional. And you're there to dress in, I think it's generally accepted that employers are entitled to have a dress code, and they expect their employees to comply, and you dress professionally.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And, like, what if somebody identified as a vampire and they came in their vampire suit? Those types of things. I mean, there has to be boundaries. There has to be a standard that employers who, when they're hiring people, can discuss with the person coming into the business. This is what we expect, and that doesn't mean that doesn't go into male female transgenderism. So somebody who is transitioning and they were originally a man and now they're going to be a female.
Clear laws and clear protocols to protect discrimination around that.
Exactly. They come in wearing a dress. That's fine, as long as it's professional. Well, who cares, right? So it's like, but when you start going into the interspecies kind of thing, that's not human, and it's taken it too far in my view.
Well, I think the other thing is if I'm the person who identifies as a particular animal, for example, what chances do I think I'm going to get at career progression if I want to seriously embody that persona? I'm going to struggle. Like, it's just fact. You're going to struggle in interviews. No one will ever tell you why you didn't get hired. It'll just be too hard basket. Sorry, we had too many applicants. It was so hard to decide, and you've been unsuccessful on this occasion.
Well, that's exactly. You couldn't even sign your letter of offer because you'd have to put a paw print down. You
can do it digitally now, Judith. There's DocuSign.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, let's just face it. If they're gone down the track of that, they're not looking to be the next managing director.
No, clearly. And look, if we put this in perspective, it must be less than a fraction of a percent of all potentially employable people in the world. A milli fraction of less than one,
Exactly.
Why are we expending this much energy? Because you and I have talked about it, others have raised it with us. You've had conversations with people that are considering, their HR people are considering having policies around this. Seriously, folks, we've got much bigger issues to worry about.
And when companies have to exactly have policies around that, that's because it's one or two people have made an issue of it, or they've come and they think, okay, and nobody wants to be
the person that says no. No one wants to be mummy and daddy to say, not appropriate in this workplace.
And try to help, because in my view, that person who's not happy being a human and wants to be a dog or a cat, they've got issues that need to be discussed with somebody who's got professional.
Or just manage your boundaries. Do what you want in your private life. I don't care what you do in your private life. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what you wear. I don't care. But when you're at work, you're at work. And there's a contract between the employer and the employee. It's a two-way contract. I will pay you if you fulfill these duties and obligations and behave in a manner that's professional and doesn't cause any harm to anybody else or my reputation or the profits of my business.
Absolutely. I mean, I to be an employer, and it's not just an employer, it's not just the person who owns the business, it's all the managers and people have to navigate so many different rules and regulations. What happens if this happens? What happens if that? It used to be at the end of the day, don't discriminate. And that meant don't discriminate against anyone. Correct. And now it's gone through this minefield of every subclass, different classifications. I mean, you couldn't possibly remember every single one of them, which brings us to
a good transition. Great transition.
Over 72 gender pronouns.
Or more. I've heard there's hundreds.
And why would, my view is, and I've always had this view for years and years, and that's why I wrote the No Sex at Work, is in my view, I'm just Judith. I never liked the idea of being Mrs., Miss. I didn't even like that. It's just
Mr., Sir, Madam, Doctor,
whatever. I'm just Judith. So in the work environment, just call me by my name. But how in the heck, as a manager or an owner, am I going to learn I read this article, and I won't mention the company, but it's a big company and a big consulting firm. And they were talking about creating a diverse environment. And there's how the different strategies, and then they say gender pronouns are the words people use to refer to themselves. They were once referred to as personal gender pronouns or preferred gender pronouns. But why are they important? So in their case, they've got this chart, which gives you an idea of how you should address people. And so, in other words, if you're talking about somebody at the work environment, let's say you're talking about Susie, and let's say you don't know Susie's name, but you're supposed to know her pronoun, her, his, or they's pronoun. So you would say, that's cause is pen, that's N's pen, that's ear pen, that's his pen, that's her pen, that's that's her, yo's, zer, and it goes on.
I'm sorry.
So you're supposed to know
where does the work get done? Where's productivity happening? If we're caught down this rabbit warren, just make it easy. Just throw pronouns out, and it's it's Judith's. Can you please ask Judith? Is Judith coming to that meeting? Please go and see Judith about that.
Yes,
Judith will know.
Exactly. And because as a manager, let's say, because a lot of people, I mean, over the years, they have hundreds and hundreds of people that are, could be reporting into them. And even if they have 20 people reporting to them, how are they going to remember all their pronouns?
And I think there's some pragmatic issues, and I've got a lived experience of this. There are times when people in these communities are moving from one to another, and they can often get very, very upset with the people around them when they use the wrong pronoun. And it's actually difficult when you've been calling somebody by that one pronoun for 20 or 30 years, and then all of a sudden they're wanting you to use a different pronoun. And when you've been in a habit for 30 years or 20 years of using one particular pronoun, it's going to be easy to use the wrong pronoun. And it's the vilification also on the other side of people who get it wrong. And it's not malicious. It's not often intentional. It's just, yeah, they haven't got into the new habit yet.
They haven't got, but if you don't know someone's gender, let's say, you don't know their gender and you don't want to offend someone, you just say, excuse me, what is your name?
Yeah.
Why do I need to ask them what is their name and what is your pronoun? I don't need to know what your pronoun is. I don't need to know.
In the workplace, I don't care. I just want you to do the job, right?
Absolutely. You're in the workplace. I don't need to know. Like when I had my business, I literally did not, I never ever worried about what people, and even back then, I'd say your partner or your spouse. I'd never say your wife or your husband, because
I'm very careful with that too.
You don't make assumptions. And and I always called people, if I would never say like salesman, I would always say salesperson or spokesperson, or even if I'm doing a presentation, I would also, how's everyone going? So never those stereotypical type of terms, even then, because you don't know. You don't know what someone's situation. All I need to know is their name. And to me, I think it's more respectful to call someone by their name rather than saying, oh, tell her to do it, or tell him to do it, or tell sis to do it, or tell whatever. Tell Susie, ask Susie, that kind of thing. It's more respectful, in my view, calling them by their name rather than by a pronoun. So
perfect. Full stop, end of subject. That's it.
And now if you don't agree with us, people, you need to tell us why, and write it in comments, whatever. Tell us why you don't agree, and educate us, because we want to know. We want to continue this conference. We don't want you to be triggered, which is
don't start me on that one. Don't start me on that one.
So
that's a word that's come into our vernacular that is so misused. It's terrible, and it completely diminishes the lived experience of people who have stress disorders or have been medically diagnosed with anxiety disorders. It seems like every second person is now saying, oh, I was triggered.
That, and the thing is, like, there's a lot of information of this if you Google things about being triggered, and the consensus is that it is being misused
completely.
Using here's something here, using the term triggered without the intention of describing a diagnosis minimizes the experiences of someone suffering from PTSD related triggers, according to the National Center for PTSD. People who have been through trauma, loss, or hardship in the past may be even more likely than others to be affected by the new potentially traumatic events. And the thing is that this is what happens, I think, in our society these days. We grab onto something, we use it, and it gets overused, and it diminishes the intent of what the initial word meant. And, that's.
So let's talk about how it's being misused in the workplace, because this is, there are a number of people that are seemingly uncomfortable about doing a particular task, and their go-to is, oh, I can't do that, or you can't say that, I've been triggered. And then all of a sudden the employer, who is not meant to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, feels vulnerable. It's the employer who feels vulnerable, or the manager or the leader feels vulnerable, because they're worried that there's going to be a complaint against them, an HR complaint against them around bullying or whatever else. And really the issue is the person feels nervous, or they feel uncomfortable, or they don't feel they have the skills, but it's got nothing to do with being triggered, unless they've had a highly traumatic experience and a medically diagnosed anxiety disorder around a particular situation. And if that's what's happened, there needs to be a conversation about it so that people can be respectful of that in the workplace. But it's a cop-out that every second person's throwing that word around as an excuse to get out of doing things.
Absolutely. And I think that's a lot to do with lack of resilience.
Agree.
And like they're so, it used to be that the lack of resilience that I think people that have these days, they're taking everything so literally. Instead of going, if someone says something, instead of going, I don't agree with that, this is my view because of these reasons, they're saying that triggered me, what you just said.
It's a cop-out.
It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out. If you don't give your reasons why you were triggered, for just whatever conversation. I'm not talking about trauma. So we're putting trauma.
We're not talking about trauma. Let's be clear. We're not talking about trauma.
Yeah, we're talking about everyday stuff that happens in the work environment and at home, where someone says, oh, that, I saw that on the news today and that really triggered me because, they don't agree with it. So trigger can also mean I don't agree. Well, if you don't agree, why don't you agree? And quit saying you're triggered and start bucking up and start saying, this is the reason why I don't agree with that. Or this, in other words, this affected me. Maybe it did affect you.
It stimulated me. It annoyed me. It aggravated me. It made me angry.
Exactly.
Label the emotion. I was reading something that a psychologist was writing, and he said anybody that came into a clinical environment talking about this would never use the word triggered if the issue was being teased out. They would say that made me angry. They'd be asked to name the emotion. And when people can't actually name the emotion, it kind of means the word trigger is just a catch-all that actually means everything and nothing. So it's a get out of jail free card. When somebody really looks introspectively, they should be able to name the emotion in terms of, gee, that made me angry, or gee, he pissed me off, or gee, hearing that was annoying. We can actually name.
There's a lot of stuff going on through YouTube, and you see these little videos that come up in your feed and everything. And I see these ones where the police pull somebody over and they pull them out, and they won't get out of their car, and they'll say things to the police officer like, I'm sorry, officer, but I have social anxiety. I don't feel like getting. The police is like going, well, you can tell that they have to be careful what they say too. And they go, well, I understand that, but I still need you to get out of the car. And then they'll start bringing up all these other different things, like, this one lady said, I drove on the wrong side of the street because I suffer from anxiety and I had to turn around, and you're like, every exclude, and I'm sure they believe it. I'm sure they believe it.
Still broken the law.
They still broke the law. You're still getting a ticket. So I think the moral of the story there is people need to get a thicker skin. At the end of the day, people, if you're finding yourself being angry and upset or triggered or whatever, start looking at yourself.
Absolutely. And people don't want to. That's the problem. It's actually hard work to look at yourself. It is.
Yeah.
It's confronting. It's
Yeah.
confronting to look inward. It's confronting to actually feel emotions. It is. It's hard work. And that's why people don't want to do it.
It's called life. It's
It's
called
called life.
and it's called a journey. And it's kind of like if you stop every time something annoys you slash so-called triggered or upsets you and think I can't do it anymore, you'll never get anywhere.
Get some
Like
help. Get some help. Seriously. If this is you, please go and get some help.
face your fears, get face your fears. It's not as bad as you think it is. In the moment you think everything is really bad and I can't get through it, it's never as bad as what you think it is. And you just need to be prepared to ask for help.
And a good counselor will help you work through all of that and help you identify what's really going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And give you management tools to help you deal with things in the future. But we need to create more resilience in our young people, in our employees, and that doesn't mean we abuse, it doesn't mean we make them work stupid hours. We're not talking about any of that. I'm talking about emotional resilience. Life is hard. People are always going to say mean things. There's always going to be somebody that does something or says something or behaves in a way that upsets you. It's how we deal with it that matters. How we
What
deal
was the first thing you learned when you were little? You'll remember this. The first thing you learned to deal with people calling your names was sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me, right? That was the first thing that your parents or somebody taught me that when I was little. And you just had to repeat it because the kids around would call you names or they would,
And the truth is words do hurt. I mean, the truth is that words do hurt, but it's how we process those words and what meaning we give to those words. And that's where we need to start flexing our resilience muscles and our self-confidence muscles and our belief in ourselves. The less we believe in ourselves, the more open we are to being upset by other people's words or when they ask us to do something that we feel uncomfortable about doing. We just got to own our stuff. We've got to own our stuff. I don't feel comfortable about public speaking, right? Whatever, like if somebody says to you, I need you to get up and do this. Oh, I'm a bit nervous about that. I feel uncomfortable about that. Just own it. Get the right coaching, get the right support. Or I've got to have a difficult conversation. I've got to make people redundant, or I've got to have a difficult conversation with somebody about their performance. It's difficult. It's not easy. If you've never done it before, of course it's hard. But ask for support in that conversation.
And if someone calls you a name or says something to you, you need to consider the source. You need to go, okay,
what's going on for them? Yeah.
It's like, I feel sorry for them, but they're so negative and their life is so horrible that they feel the need to call me a name and, laugh it off. Just do when I say laugh it off, you're right. Sometimes things can hurt, but they only hurt as much as you let them hurt you. If you dwell on it and you stew on it and everything else, then they've won.
Yeah. And we're not talking about bullying here. Let's be clear, folks. We're not talking about systemic bullying here. We're talking about other issues around.
But it's about standing up for yourself. It's about standing up for yourself as well and learning how to do that. And it's always hard the first time. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the key is if someone is treating you or annoying you or you're having issues, you got to speak to somebody you trust.
Yeah, go and speak to somebody you trust.
Exactly. Now let's talk about money.
Let's talk about money, honey. Okay, so the big news the last week, has been the release of the gender pay gap study. So any company in Australia with employees more than 100 now has to report on the gender pay gap. And I have to say, if I'm being balanced about it, Judith, there's a bit of a media beat up here. Yes, there is a gender pay gap, but the way they calculate that is if you're in a female-dominated company, for example, they take the median salary of the females, who are typically lower paid salaries, And then they take the median salary of the men. And often they're in senior executive roles, or they're in engineering roles or tech roles where they get paid more. And what has come out is that there is a gender pay gap. And I think there's a bit of a media beat up, a bit of divisiveness around there. I think the biggest issue around all of this is that we have insufficient numbers of women represented in those senior, better paying roles. And I think that's the problem that needs to be fixed, because this gender pay gap story is not about like for like. And there's still issues in terms of same job, same pay. But I think this big gap in reporting that we've seen this week is a little bit of clickbait.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'd love to. We should get Bianca from Financy on here, who does all the a lot of the stats, to talk about this as well, because like we did when I had my executive search business, we did salary surveys for 10 years for one of the magazines. And so this was something that I personally was actually speaking to people. Now that's in financial services, right? So it is different. It is a different industry. But one of the things that I found, and I truly believe is probably no different today, just by given all the people that I speak to, is that one of the things that I saw that was a big issue in the salary differences within the same level type roles were that the women tended to be in the roles longer. So they tended to be long-term in that role, where the guys tended to move.
And get a pay increase every time they move.
Exactly. So as a headhunter, obviously, when we would bring people over, they would get a big increase. And there could be four people in that team that were on lower salaries than that new employee. So the men turned over, and they also asked for an increase consistently every year, where the women tended.
We're not so good at that, are we? We're not.
No, they've gotten better, but yeah, they've gotten better
year after year.
Yeah, because of advocates and mentors, they've gotten better. But the reality is, there's still, there's still a lack of women in the mainstream. The numbers have increased too much, as far as I know. But also, this is the thing that used to bug the hell out of me, and it probably won't make a lot of HR people happy there, is that HR should be responsible to make sure this doesn't happen. And now it's not necessarily HR's fault if they're not given the accountability, but they're the ones that know when people are coming in, and if people are in it, they should be monitoring this and making
sure. We're talking same job, same pay?
Same job, same pay. Same job, same pay. Or, I mean, let's face it. I think I read somewhere that the reason why the men, because of bonus structures as well, because they were making higher bonuses.
Well, because if we're talking about hourly paid workers, not executive salaries, then of course there'll be people that will be doing more overtimes, they'll be getting more money. And, if there are women of childbearing age, there's those classic issues that keep coming up time and time again, that maybe the women aren't doing as much overtime because they're taking a bigger brunt of the child rearing experiences. Absolutely. They don't want to move companies as much because they want to get, if they're in an organization that pays great maternity leave, you want to stay there, you want to be there so that you're entitled to it, and then you want to enjoy the benefit of it.
I interviewed a lot of executive level women who were not at the divisional director level. They were more at like the general manager level. And they did not want to go to the divisional director level for the reasons that they felt that they were comfortable where they were making good salaries. And they didn't want to go to that director level because, in their view, it was the danger zone. So in other words, it was a role where
it heads on the chopping block.
On the chopping block, yep. And they often, because in financial services, it's a highly paid industry, often the women were the major breadwinners in their families, because they might be married to somebody who's in fast-moving consumer goods or retail or where the salaries aren't as lucrative as they are in financial services. So they'd be going, now, they give me flexibility, they give me everything I want. I'm happy. I'm in this job for 10 years, which goes to my point about not moving. And I want to stay. So there are some things within some of these stats that aren't quite accurate. And there probably needs to be something done as far as getting in. I mean, look, I've always said if we look at who was Shamara, who's the CEO of Macquarie. She's the highest paid CEO.
Oh, phenomenal woman. Phenomenal.
So if she's the highest paid CEO, what's the problem? How did she do it?
I think, yeah. And look, it's complex and it's nuanced. And I think, the big beat up was around female brands. So there was a retail clothing brand that had massive gender pay gap issues. Most of their floor staff were women, but their senior executives were mostly men. And when they compared the salaries, of course, they were out of kilter. I think it's nuanced. It's industry by industry. It's personal life decisions. To your point, some women are making different choices. They don't want the extra responsibility, or they want the job security over that high paying salary. It is so nuanced and so complex, and we've been trying to unravel this for years, and we're making progress. And that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't continue making progress. Doesn't mean to say we shouldn't continue to encourage women to step up, because part of the issue preventing women from stepping up is our own limiting beliefs. It's got nothing to do with our competence. It's got nothing to do with anything. It's either we don't feel we can do it, we have imposter syndrome, or we don't feel confident enough. And it just takes a bit of encouragement and a bit of mentorship to say, you got this, babe. You've got this.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I think that some of the things that came out was that about the superannuation. And, superannuation should be paid in full during maternity leave.
And that's the big gap. There are big gaps when women take time out.
They take time out and things. And that was what
there are some structural issues there.
Yeah. So there's some work to be done. Would love to know everybody's thoughts on that. Again, if you've got more information and you want to enlighten us.
We need more women in senior roles.
We need more women in senior roles.
And in politics, and while we're at it, and in politics, because, yeah.
Yes, I think so. Well, there is a group that has, I forgot the name of it now, that is pushing women in politics, and they're doing a great job. I'll look that up, and we can talk about that on another.
More balanced representation in the senior leadership roles, because we get better outcomes.
Yeah,
we've just got to keep working at how we make that happen.
And that's part of that diversity, that diversity and inclusion, and making sure that happens. And not because I know we have the argument of merit versus quotas, and that's been going on forever, but equal opportunity for what's the word I'm thinking of, that opportunity of when someone's going
access.
For a role.
Yeah, opportunity of access.
Exactly. Yes. So I mean, that's really important. And also there's still things that they can do within organizations to make sure that, one, they are hiring the best person, but that everybody's getting that opportunity. And I think it comes down to the recruitment process as well. Making sure that there's equality on the panel of people who are doing the interviewing, to be able to make sure that there's not bias. But anyway, that's a whole new episode.
Also preparing people, if we've identified that there are insufficient numbers of women in senior roles, is get some programs in there to make sure that the women who have been identified as potential future, executive leaders, that they're coached and mentored to actually step into those roles. Many of them are already there mentally, emotionally, psychologically, competence-wise, but there's a whole bunch who could do the job that just don't believe they can do the job. So support them to believe that.
Support them to believe, and give them equality of opportunity to be able to go and to participate in that process. And that, a lot of times we've talked about that before, where, when I have approached women in the past for roles, they haven't wanted to go forward for timing reasons and things like that. So it is very important that that you do have people in your corner who are your cheerleaders and who are encouraging you to move into other positions and move up the ladder, move sideways, or, check out opportunities, and also make those connections, because connections are important.
Yep, definitely.
Relationship
Definitely.
connections. And, we've been losing a lot of that in the last 3-4 years, and it's time to pump it back up again.
Yep, definitely. Well, did we bite off more than we could chew this episode, Judith?
Well, I don't know. Let's hear what the responses are. Let us know what you think when we put this out. Follow us on Spotify and YouTube and Apple, or whatever your platform is. But also comment when we put out the post on LinkedIn and on Instagram. Tell us what you think. We can take it.
We're resilient.
We're resilient. Thanks, Krystyna.
Thanks, Judith.
See ya.
Bye. For more information about Every Step and our guests, head to everysteppodcast.com. To be notified of new podcasts, please subscribe via your favourite listening platform. And of course, follow us on social media and direct message us to share your ideas about guests or topics.